Take a deep dive into the current world of media with Nic Hayes, founder and managing director of Media Stable. Nic shares how he spotted an opportunity in the changing media landscape to create Media Stable, which actively links experts and their views with media outlets to produce informed and trusted content. Through this conversation, Nic provides an insightful commentary on the full range of media platforms, from traditional forms of print, TV and radio through to online and social media, as well as the changes in our consumer behaviours. Interestingly, Nic explains how, through a growing erosion of trust in social media content, there is the potential for people to return to the more traditional forms of media once they gain more awareness of the often questionable credibility and decide to become more discerning media consumers. We also spend time discussing the impact of content that is aimed at giving people what they want versus what they need, as well as the importance of real human relationships and interaction. Nic is a wonderfully engaging as well as knowledgeable man, which makes this conversation both entertaining and thought-provoking, and leaves the listener with the challenge to consider a more discerning consumption of media in a day-to-day life. So enjoy Nic. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards. Media in all its forms and machinations of where we're going today with my guest, Nic Hayes. Nic, welcome to the show.
G'day, Bryn, and can I just say, I know this is an audio forum, but I love the fact you're wearing your red waistcoat right now, in the fact that, you know, in all the photos I've seen, there's the red waistcoat, but you wear it during these interviews.
Yes.
This is very impressive.
Yeah, it's part of the state now. So I studied NLP a long time ago, and it's part of the state. I put it on, and now I'm Bryn, podcast interviewer.
I love it. And it's only unfortunate that this is a West Australian podcast, in that the fact that the weather doesn't allow us to wear a waistcoat outside too much. You know, this should be a Victorian podcast or a European podcast.
Yeah. Well, this one's actually, it was a present from my mother a few years ago, and you'll notice back in England, you know, this is quite thick.
Yeah.
So it's woolen one. I really feel like I need to get a tailor on the podcast so I can have like a thinner
one, thin down.
Summer version.
Yeah.
Do you know any good tailors?
I do know. We've got a few experts that are
Excellent.
in the space that do talk this, so we might have to make a connection.
Yes, let's do that. Awesome. So, Nic. So one of the first things I like to talk to my guests about, because it's called WA Real, is how they came to be in Western Australia. So you moved here over 20 odd years ago.
Yep.
From Melbourne for a job. Is it home now?
Oh, it's definitely home now.
Why is that?
I've got two children that are now West Australians. I've got boys that barrack for the West Coast Eagles and follow the Scorchers. Right. You know, I'm a North Melbourne supporter. I follow the Victorian Bushrangers.
Yeah.
So I have claimed West Australia as home now, purely for the fact that I did marry a WA girl. Like as I said, my boys are both West Australian, but I've been here long enough to feel that West Australia is part of me. It's in my blood now. There are certain aspects of Victoria though that I still love and adore, and still are part of me. And as I have mentioned, you know, I am a tragic North Melbourne supporter, which, you know, it would probably have been a lot easier to start barracking for the West Coast Eagles here. Yeah. But, you know, if you're a real follower of football, you never change your football club. So, you know, I've stuck with that. And, you know, I love going back to Melbourne. Melbourne still feels very, very special to me, but Perth is home. WA is home now. So it's always nice to visit, but it's even better to come back home.
Yeah. I've lived in WA now for coming up for 10 years, and I haven't spent a lot of time in Melbourne. What are the major differences for you, having grown up in one and living in the other now?
Yeah, it was. I think when
what did you miss in one? And
well, all my family and friends are in Melbourne, and that was really hard. It wasn't so hard back in the day to leave, because this Western Australia, this whole Perth, was one big adventure. This was, you know, I was a 25-year-old kid who was given an opportunity, or 26-year-old kid, 25 I think I was, to run a state office, and, you know, to get in and get away from my parents, get away from my friends, get away from everything that I did know, and just start off in this adventure. And it was exciting. It was hard to leave, but at the same time, it was just a joy to. And then as time went on, I just went, this place is remarkable. You know, I started referring to it as God's country. Yeah. Because having worked in, and I immediately, the minute I got over here, I work in media. I remember my very first radio interview that I did, and we were talking about the top issues that were happening around in WA, and there was an arsenic spill down at Coburn Sound.
Right.
And as a Victorian, if you read the word Coburn Sound, it reads like Cockburn Sound.
Yeah. Oh.
And of course,
did to me when I arrived.
Yeah, I read it and I talked about it on radio, and I was very quickly corrected by the radio presenter that it's Coburn Sound, Nick. And I said, no, it says here Cockburn Sound. And we're having this argument. Here I am, a Victorian, been in the place 3 weeks, telling someone from Western Australia this is how to say your name. But it's like very quickly, it gets into your blood. Perth, and it was a remarkable time just to really explore and see a space that, one, it was out of my comfort zone, and two, to do it all on my own, because everything I'd done up until then, sort of, you always had friends and family. You had fallback there. There was no fallback here. Yeah, so it was the differences. Moving on and getting out of there. I think the chance, and you would have experienced this, leaving your home country and town, is to get out of your comfort zone, get away from family and friends that have been always there to support you. And I'm not that I wanted to for any negative reason, but other than just to go out and do it on my own.
Yes.
And we got that opportunity to do it here.
Absolutely. There's a certain amount of freedom here, both in terms of movement and space, but also opportunity to do things.
Oh, and it's not Melbourne or Sydney. Western Australia has its own identity. Now, I've lived in Adelaide for a year. Adelaide has no identity, and I'm sorry for all the Adelaide listeners that you have, but Adelaide's a mixture between Melbourne and Perth. It's not quite Perth in its relaxation, its lifestyle, etc. Its beautiful beaches and wonderful climate, and it's not quite Melbourne in its business and its corporate approach to everything, and very vibrant in its cultural scene. So I feel sorry for those that live in Adelaide, because you're not quite Melbourne, not quite Perth, and Perth has that, and I refer to it as God's country. Has that feeling that I was working, but I never felt like I was ever working one day in my life. Yeah, I just always felt like I was on holiday, running into the office, between 8 and 5, and then just enjoying life. It was an amazing experience to get over here.
Awesome. So media is your game.
Media is my game.
Indeed. So where does the love of media come from in the Nic story? What is it about it?
Okay, well, media. Funnily enough, when I was at university, I did a Bachelor of Arts majoring in psychology, and media was my minor.
Right.
And but media was the most fun part of going to university.
Yeah.
There was, you were in a lecture theatre with a whole heap of young people that were determined to tell stories, that wanted to tell stories in a different way. The media and the medium of radio, television, and even print media was just, it was phenomenal. It was so exciting. Whereas psychology was so practical. There was so much theory that was thrown at you, and you really felt like you were a student. You were back at doing it, and it was. Media was just so much fun, and I never thought I'd ever get a job in media. I just thought that was just my minor. That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Life does throw spanners into the works now and then, and I did 1 year of university, then went and joined the army. So that was back in 1992. There was Gulf War One had just happened, and the government had realised that they didn't have enough troops in the system, so they started up a scheme called the Ready Reserve Scheme. Yeah. Now the Ready Reserve Scheme was just to introduce an influx of 5,000, 6,000 soldiers in one hit. So I did that, and that sort of interrupted my university life. So as I came back to university after doing 1 year full-time and 4 years part-time, my whole love of media sort of rose well above my love of psychology. I mean, psychology still think is fascinating. Anyone who's a psychologist, and I mean, just the study of the mind and behaviour is phenomenal. But there was just a lot of work there that I wasn't prepared to do back then. So media very quickly became my major, and psychology became my minor along with maths. And I thrived in it. I absolutely loved it and adored it, and met some wonderful people along the way. And as I was finishing off my degree, I ended up joining the police force of all things. So I see where this podcast really does go off in tangents, doesn't it? Once you start doing some self-reflection, you start going off. Well, then I'd finished my degree.
Don't worry, I'm here to keep on track.
I know, please do. But before I'd finished my degree, I'd actually joined the police force, the Victorian police force. And because partly coming out of military life and then going into into university, I still had an appetite and desire to do something in that pathway.
You like the uniforms?
And there's a gun on your side, and you can do all that. No, I as a kid always wanted to be a police officer, and so I don't know why, but I fulfilled that. I got in, and hadn't quite finished my degree. I was still a part of the Ready Reserve, and I just joined the police force. So that put a minor halt in finishing my degree in media, but it wasn't a long halt because I was only in the police force for 12 weeks.
Oh, weeks, yes.
Yeah, 12 weeks. It's not a long time. I was 12 weeks into a 20-week police academy course, which ended up me sort of departing and resigning at week 12. Yeah. And look, then after that, did a bit of European travel, and then and came back to my degree and finished it off. So that's how I got there.
You took your time over this degree, didn't you?
I did. I think most people do.
Right.
I don't know. I think back in the days, you weren't really. A lot of my friends, half of my friends decided straight into the workforce. That's what they did. A couple of my really dedicated and friends that concentrated on it, finished their course in the years that were required. But others were, jumping in and jumping out. And I still at that point didn't quite know what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So hence being in the army, then being in the police force. Still hadn't finished my degree, but after that, came back, finished it off, and then I was working in hospitality for a little while, and I got an opportunity to work, or I applied for a job for a media intelligence agency called Rehaim, and they were just the leaders of what they were doing. They're really, if you think about it, anything that you say on radio, television, or print media, businesses and governments want to know. So I got a role there as a sales manager, and that's where I sort of took what I learned and put it into a media intelligence space, which was a slight different to producing radio and television to actually monitoring it.
Yes.
So it was a different sort of position, different stance, but I got there in the end. And since doing media intelligence, I did that for 10 years here in Australia, and then 3 years in the UK, came home and said, no more, can't do it anymore. That's it, that's done. I want to do something. I want to do more consulting. I want to be a part of other people's media journey, more so than monitoring what they've been doing. I'd rather be a part and help them get in there, and that's I suppose where Media Stable was founded and has blossomed over the last 8 years. Right.
So tell me, what does Media Stable do?
Okay,
in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, and that's important. In a nutshell, Media Stable is a platform for experts and commentators, people of business, people who are good at what they do, to project themselves into the media. So for media to be able to see who these people are. So if you were to compare it, it's like a LinkedIn platform for media to find the right experts and commentators to work with.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're also content producers ourselves. So we encourage our experts to put together content to feed into the media,
Yes.
so that the media can pick and choose what they want to
there's
work
a bit
with.
of both ways.
It's
if
got to go.
flares up, they can come to you to find somebody to come up with an informed view.
Yep.
But at the same time, those people with the informed view can create content to create a story.
Correct. Spot on. And it's got to be two ways, because the media itself, we saw it many years ago, almost 8 years ago, was that the media resources were drying up, both personnel and also too on a financial level.
Yes.
And there were less people working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to go about and do is create a resource that media could use, not just to find any old person, but find a qualified person.
Yes.
And also to feed content of different ideas and different opportunities for them to go, you know what, I like that, let's work with that. So a little bit different to a press release, because most media today aren't reading press releases.
Yes.
These are just little snippets, little précis of stories and yarns that they can work with and go, ooh, I like that, let's work with that. And contact them directly. We stay out of it completely. And
How do you mean you stay out?
Well, we provide all the contact details of the expert, so the media doesn't go via us. They go straight to the expert for commentary around the item that they've introduced. The other side of it is if the media is looking for, and in the case of just last week, the Weekend Today show was looking for a leadership expert. We put our best leadership expert in front of them.
Yeah.
And send it over, and within minutes they're booked to appear on the Today Show. So that's the
that
kind
would
of
really, just thinking it through, that would really accelerate things then for the journalists and the media programs themselves.
Yeah.
Whilst also having the benefit of people who wouldn't normally get picked up and have the opportunity to share their gold nuggets and wisdom and things like that. It gives them an opportunity to put something out to inform things further.
It does, and it. Look, the media system, it's not that it's broken, it's just that it's not manned or to a level that it once was.
Yes.
There's not someone sitting there standing by the fax machine. Remember the fax machine? God.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Someone sent me something with a fax machine number on. I go, is they still around, really? Awesome. But people...
Is that redundant feature on your multi-copier printer thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But the thing was, back in the day, there was a producer or there was an intern that would sit by the fax machine, taking it off, all the different pieces of content and information that was going around, and really go through it with a fine-tooth comb to say, oh, this is a good yarn, this is a good story, let's work with this. Today, 90% of emails that are sent to journalists are deleted before they're even opened.
Yes.
And that's because just all the amount of junk that's going on, all the amount of content that's not relevant that's sent through, also to a lack of understanding of how journalists work today.
Yes.
And that comes from all levels, from public relations companies right down to business owners. And I suppose where Media Stable fits in is that we sort of know how they work.
Yes.
We've built relationships with them, and the days of relationships are still here. They're still there. We work with those that we trust. We work with those that we've had content from before, that we know that is going to be right. It's going to be on the money. It's going to be correct.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any time to waste. We don't have any time to sift through. We are all time poor.
Yep.
We at Media Stable just take that element out and make it a little bit easier. And both media and the experts appreciate it because we can help them become better communicators. And for the media, we help them get high quality content together.
Yes.
Because they do tend to mess up now and then, the poor old media. Sometimes they're interviewing the wrong people. Sometimes, when I say the wrong people who say they are who they on paper, but they're not actually that person at all. So,
Indeed.
we've worked hard to build that trusted resource there for them.
There must be a whole stack of people in relationship management in this then.
We've got it. We're only, as in from Media Stable's perspective. We're a team of 5, and we work nationally across the country. Look, the perception there, we work with just over 270 experts at the moment. Not all of them are going to have media wanting to go out tomorrow. and they've got structured systems there that they're going to have key moments and times. But relationships, the connections with relationships with the media, we work with 700 personnel across media that know us and work with us, and they are reaching out for content. But that's because we've actually built that relationship. Yeah. We've connected with them. And we've met with them. And as long as our system and our service continues to deliver high quality, they'll continue to use it. The minute we throw a couple of curveballs in there or a couple of wrong uns, we could fall over. Yeah.
So what constitutes an expert for you then?
Expert. Look, I've got this vision of an expert that's someone who has been doing what they've been doing for 10 years,
right?
As a minimum. Someone who is either a leader or owns their own business, has the ability to make those decisions, has an opinion that is supported with fact and evidence. But the opinion's not always going to be the right opinion. Everyone's got the beautiful thing about what we've got is that everyone's got opinions.
Oh, yeah.
What we have here is how you argue it, how you sell it, and how you present it and put it forward. The best opinions and the best media is when we've got two opinions fighting each other.
Yes.
Because that creates the trouble. And when there's trouble, we've got really interesting media. Yeah, correct. Because definitely what's not an expert is someone that wants to sit on the fence, and you'll occasionally hear the word no comment. That's not an expert. That's someone who just refuses to answer the question.
Yeah.
An expert is someone who I strongly believe has a passion and a reason to want to present their information or present their ideas and views to a larger audience, because they want to leave behind their thoughts and views. They want
to make an impact.
They've got to make an impact. They want to leave a legacy. They want to be someone who is prepared to do that. And you've got to want to do it. You've got to be good at it. And you've got to be available. And they're the other elements of a good quality expert, because the other side of it is that if you're not available to give your expert opinion, then it's just silence at the end. So there's lots of little elements behind an expert, but I think that anyone who's qualified and believes that they've got something to share and can back it with facts and evidence, we see them as the experts.
It's interesting that there seems to be more and more of a focus on experts actually getting their views out there, as opposed to just sort of generally taking messages on board.
Yeah.
Now we're getting more and more focused experts, but it's interesting because at the same time, with the advent of the internet and stuff, we can Google something and then we feel like we're the pub expert straight away.
Yep.
So I guess it's the interesting part there of how do you compete between an expert who actually, for want of a better phrase, knows their shit.
Yep.
To the pub expert who's just Googled something.
We all know, everyone that's listening to this will know a good pub expert. They'll know people that knows everything.
Yeah. We've all been in a dinner party, gone to the toilet, Googled something, come back, and then been slightly more knowledgeable 10 seconds later.
Yeah, I think, look, definitely the emergence of the internet and Google and everything along the lines there. Yeah. Social media has been incredible for that, because there was once a time when those that aren't the experts that could voice their opinions and position, and it was very quickly lost because it was lost in the pub. There was no recourse. There was no follow up. There was no amplification of any of the content that they'd produced. It's now social media's allowed this.
Yeah, and there were in the pub. You get some very solid, real human feedback, like your mate saying, "That's crap."
Yeah, and that's called the pub test.
And that's real.
Yeah,
like that's genuinely real. You get the feedback, the body language, everything.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we do, and you're going to hear something crazy from me saying I think we're going to revert back to that. Yeah. I think that there is certain things that are going on in media today that, and particularly in social media, that the trust element has been lost. In that everyone seems to have a position they think they've got an expert opinion on, they've got a say in it, and I believe everyone should have a say. Everyone should have an opinion, But the biggest challenge right now is the expert opinion of people, the expert position of people. Who is the trusted person? Who is the trusted advice that we should be listening to? You know, we're discussing issues in media today around climate change. We're discussing issues around the Australian bushfires. You know, we're talking all things around what Donald Trump talks about in fake news. Donald Trump only calls fake news because it's news he doesn't want to hear. You know, that's a quick slander there for that. But for some elements, though, of social media, there is a lot of fake news. You know, it's constructed for a particular purpose and message. You know, news, the reason I think that we will return back to a form of, or the reason why traditional media like radio, television and print and online, they still cover the four pillars of journalism. They still believe there's quality control checks that need to take place. Pillars? The four pillars. So, now you're gonna test me on this one. Right. But it's the four. For journalists, they have to follow four protocols around anything that they're presenting, and it's take out the opinion. It's around the source, the identification, the truth behind any of the sources that they're receiving it from. It's the quality control checks that take place at the editorial space and edge. You just can't put anything on radio. You just can't put anything on TV. Well, you hear it, but even still, there is quality control checks and even legal ramifications around what you're putting on there. But on the internet, it's free for all.
Yes.
So, you know, there will come a time when people will start getting, there'll be criminal actions, there'll be slanderous actions, libelous actions taking place for people taking and making accusations around people on the internet. I think that the internet has turned us into, while I see us moving as a platform where there's a platform of high good, like there is things that we've seen that people raising money for the Australian bushfires incredibly well through social media, but I don't think that actually makes up for all the bile and spew that is in social media generally. I mean, there really is a lot of content and information out there that you sit there and you go, what are these people actually thinking when they're sending it out?
Oh, yeah.
They think they're faceless, but the reality here is that you're not. That we can pin you back to exactly who you are and what you stand for. And some people want their 15 seconds of fame. They want to do it and they want to get retweeted and pushed out and amplified further. But the reality here is that a lot of the information they're putting out it's not right. And also too, it's ugly. I mean, sometimes you just want to have a break from social media because you go, seriously, this is what people are thinking? No, I can't. You can't put up with it.
Sad indictment if that's where everybody is.
Oh, it's a miserable place. One of my first tweets for the year was, can people just calm the farm? Sincerely, you're not going to get through 2020 if you're going to be like this. People's heart rate must be up through the roof. Blood pressure must be going wrong. And you would think that we're living in the worst of times. I personally think we're living in the best of times. And yet people just want to get negative. They just want to, feel, they want to throw, I've got a bit of a theory, and this might be the psychology side behind coming from me, is that they want to throw mud and throw things out there to forget about how their life's going and how maybe they're heading down, their path's heading.
Yes.
They want to have a go at everyone else except for having a little bit of an introvert look into to what they're doing in their own life. And I just feel that's social media at the moment. It's not the nicest place.
I've been doing a bit of sort of listening to a couple of particular sources and mulling on myself, particularly having done the number of podcasts that I have. And I get the sense at the moment, if we're going to look at social media, that there's almost an identity crisis going on within people, whereby they really don't know who they are when they're getting bombarded by so much stuff from so many different places. You get all these slithers of the top 1% of excellence in people's lives, and then you stick them all together and constantly compare yourself against that, and then my life's not quite like that. I don't look like that. I don't drive that car like that. And then there's all this bile on there as well. You're not getting that instant feedback like you do when you make in the pub goes, "That's shit, Nick."
Yeah.
And so people's form and identity at one level is going through an enormous crisis.
Yeah, but Bryn, if you said that was shit to me, Nick, and we're having a beer, I'd take that on board, and I'd take that for real.
Yeah.
The problem is that there's faceless people out there that throw mud at you.
Yeah.
And some people, and the majority of people, we take it in. We start getting affected by it.
Yeah.
Whereas they're actually just the keyboard warriors that are sitting there having a crack at everything.
Yeah.
I've been amazed. I should let it know. I do work for quite a few different organisations that are the focus of a lot of media. So, in the case of, I work for a little organisation called the Sheep Collective. Now, the Sheep Collective is a group of farmers. They're a group of transport people. There's those that are exporting, like the live sheep trade, and obviously that's been under fire by the media across the board. But when they came to us and sat down also too with another media agency, they just said, look, we just want to change the narrative. We don't get a voice in all of this.
Yes.
Because only one side's ever told. Let us tell. Can we tell our story? And when you go back and have a look at the story and the way that it all plays out, you go, hey, and I've got to say from the beginning, I was skeptical about it myself because I was also subject to that one-sided conversation.
Yeah.
I said, look, I'm not sure I really want to take this on. But you listen to the people, you listen to their side of the story, and you go, you're right. You have a right to talk about this. You have a right to tell your side of the story because this has been completely missed. So animal activists, they've got a particular role and job. They love their animals. I get it. But also, too, we've got a job and a role to keep this country going, and there is people to feed. And, whether you're a vegan or not, I'm sorry, but I love my meat, and I'm going to eat it, and so does the rest of the world. But the way that story was being told was we managed to push it out in a different way. We managed to start communicating it so that media took advantage and took the opportunity to have a look and go, hey, this isn't what that lot over there have been saying it is. This isn't the drudge of humankind dealing and maltreating animals to all levels. Actually, it's a very different story. And that, to me, it was an opportunity there to go, look, everyone has a story. They should be telling it. It's just sometimes some voices are louder than others.
Yes.
And it tends to be those with the littlest of following or the more negative tend to shout out the loudest. And we've got a real problem here, Bryn, because the problem is that the politicians listen to this stuff. They actually listen to what's going on in social media. And I think that they've got to completely step back from that. Start leading like they used to. Start making decisions around...
Leading with some legacy in mind.
Well, correct. But also to make some tough decisions. Don't worry about what Twitter says. Don't worry about what Facebook's going on. If you've made the right decision, you'll get rewarded for it at the end of the day. And I think sometimes social media, they live on the where they the old days of traditional media where the newspaper came out once a day. You had a 24-hour chance to soak it all in and make some very good decisions. We live on a minute.
Reflect.
Yeah, some time to reflect.
It's interesting that I never thought about that.
There's no
now it's just on.
It's minute by minute, minute by minute.
Second.
Correct, second by second, millisecond by millisecond.
Yeah.
It's who, and they're making decisions and policy on the run that you sit there and you go, you know what? If we had, if John Howard was probably the last of the prime ministers here in Australia that wasn't so subject to what was going on in social media. Facebook had just emerged during his prime ministership, and the other social media platforms were starting to emerge. But he was able to make decisions and reflect on them. And I think that was probably, if you go back in time, our decade of poor leadership from federal government wise has also correlated with the fact that we've had the emergence of social media. They're too worried about lining their own pockets and getting re-elected than they are about governing and leading.
Yes.
And look, I don't want to put social media down to the point that it is it's the killing of humanity. It's nothing like that at all. Social media has so many positive aspects behind it. It's playing a role. It's playing too big a role, Bryn.
Yes.
And that is what probably most in newspapers, radio and television will say, is that the advertising spend has headed over towards social media, as opposed to, people still trust print media. They still trust radio, and they still trust TV. They're just not viewing them as much. And that's the challenge there for the media houses, is to go away and say, well, how do we bring you back?
Yes.
And the only way they can bring them back is still continue building that trust and those real news stories. Because what you're reading and seeing on Facebook, I can assure you, take it with a grain of salt. Don't take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a bag of salt.
Yes.
Because, there is a good chance that what you're reading or seeing or viewing is just not right. And I get back to the 4 pillars of journalism that I haven't been able to account for you, but the quality control check that is around there.
Yeah.
There is protocols that journalists have to take to do what they're doing. Now, we all know that certain media has bias. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
The West Australian 7 West, and what Mr. Stokes has implied and what he will do is very different to that of a Channel 9 or, let's say, a News Corp publication. They've all got different positions. Murdoch, we've only just seen it in recent times that Murdoch's son is having a crack at him for all the news and information that he's putting through his newspapers on climate denial. They have a position, but we know that.
Yes.
On social media, we don't know their position, and that's when sometimes we can get a little bit distorted. So that's one of my bugbears, Bryn. I get frustrated around social media in some cases, but I'm a participant in it. I very much still play in Facebook, Twitter, and even LinkedIn. I don't sort of see that as a social media platform. I see that as a social working network. But Twitter has its pros and cons, but it's there's just a little bit too much con than pro.
There seems to almost be a lack of conscious usage.
Good point. I think that people
more unconscious. Kind of when you're participating in it, who's driving the bus, you or your 12-year-old self?
Yeah. I think that there seems to be a perception that there is a lack of either responsibility or the repercussion on anything that we're saying. But there's a little thing that we say in media. Don't say, or to anyone really, don't say anything that you wouldn't say to your grandmother. Yeah. And if you're prepared to go beyond that, then be prepared to take the repercussions that come with that.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing people getting sacked for posts that they're putting on Facebook and on social media.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, that's my personal life. Well, no, you're putting your personal life in a public arena, and that will reflect on the brand if that's the way they feel about it.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because you've got an international stage, you've got a global stage here that's sitting here that anyone can go away and view. You're in trouble if you've decided to do that. And we've got a certain Israel Folau, a rugby player who wants to put his personal beliefs above everything else, and that reflects poorly on the brand. Although that particular brand didn't do itself much favours either in its way that it handled it. But
no,
everything's so global. We're looking over the fences. There was once a day you could look over the fence to your next door neighbour. Now you can look over the fences of every neighbour.
True.
And that's a little frightening.
So where are the traditional channels of media now? You mentioned earlier on the TV, radio, print. Where are they now?
They're in a position where they've lost their core market, their core audiences to the social, the online side. Yeah. And it's a highly competitive space. Like even us right now, we're doing a podcast.
Yes.
This is competition for radio, okay?
Yeah.
Whether radio likes that or not, but podcasting has grown right across the globe because now as a consumer, what has happened is that the broadcasters have now, the whole system's been flipped. Because the internet allows us to click on the content that we wish to peruse, or at the time that we decide.
Yes.
Not when Channel 9 decides to put it on, Married at First Sight at 7:30.
Yes.
Because I know that's one of your favourite programs, Bryn.
Oh, absolutely.
But they tell you the time that you're going to be viewing and watching.
Yeah.
Whereas now, today, we don't go at 9:30. I might 7:30. I'm going to watch it at 10:30 when it's my time.
Yeah.
You know, when I've gone down to the pub and had a few beers with the boys, I'm going to go back and watch it. And big fan of Married at First Sight, I must say. Not really,
No.
but you know, but we are click. We're clicking as consumers. It's in our time. We've got control of that.
Yeah.
And that's where the likes of Netflix and the emergence of all those online platforms have now said, right, if you want it, just click a button for it.
Yes.
Whereas broadcasters never had that. And they're getting their act together. They're becoming better at that. They're allowing for online, replay and callback. So they're getting better. They were just a bit slow off the mark.
Yes.
Print is a funny old beast because, we used to call print media the rivers of gold in advertising. Remember when you used to pick up a Saturday paper and you'd literally have to get a forklift to take it home?
Yes.
It was the size of your telephone book.
Yes.
Remember a telephone book, Bryn?
I do.
Remember the telephone books?
The yellow pages, strong men ripping them.
Well, those things don't exist anymore.
No.
But they were the rivers of gold because there was every little line that was there. That was about $9.95 for every single line that was in there. It was just pure money-making opportunity. But now it's all online. So newspapers are thinner. But the thing is with newspapers and how we consume them is that we can consume them anywhere. And we can take that information. And newspapers too, where they missed the boat with online was the fact that they gave it away for nothing for such a long time. And now all of a sudden paywalls are coming up and they're expecting us to pay for it.
Yeah.
Now, we will start paying for it again, for sure. But it'll take a generation for that to happen because they gave it to us for nothing and it takes a little bit for us to return back. But radio is still growing. Radio is still emerging, and in particular in a country like Australia where, what's the first thing you do when you get in the car? You chuck on the radio. Or if you're not listening to WA Real, there's a podcast. So, that's the first thing you do. And we still, as just the nature and the geographic position that we are, we have to do that. And radio is beautiful too because as a medium you can listen and do two things at once, whereas television and print media you've got to really just sit down and concentrate. It's still vibrant. There's still a lot of energy in there, and I mentioned earlier that the resources have been cut both on a financial and a human side of it. But there's still an appetite to deliver high quality information and content through those, and they still got audience, and the audience is still those that are the decision makers, those with the purse strings.
Yes.
Those that are making big financial decisions are still consuming traditional media.
Yeah.
They're still getting their head around social, but we've got generations now that have never paid for a newspaper. But Bryn, I never paid for a newspaper until I was 28.
No.
I never paid for a newspaper. You know why? I wasn't that interested in it, unless I was reading the sports pages.
Yeah.
Because until you start buying cars and homes and stuff like that and become part of the big, societal machine that builds, you tend not to. So there's all little different arguments there. But I think that media has, and I talked about it earlier, that the whole system may flip, is that we're going to get to a critical point where what we're hearing and seeing on social media is going to be way too much for us. We're just not going to be able to cope with it.
Yes. And
we're going to go back to the sources that we trust. And the big challenge for all the media houses is to continue to produce high quality content, good news that is real, and news that the people need to hear, not necessarily want to hear.
Yes.
And there's a real difference there. What they need to hear as opposed to what they want to hear.
Now that's really interesting because that led me to another question I've got for you about content in general. I, several years ago, made a conscious decision, about 5 or 6 years ago, I made a conscious decision to reduce the level of coffee I was drinking, but also the level of just media, because I just felt I was given a whole lot of stuff that just wasn't nourishing me.
Yep.
And it felt like it was stuff that the base level of, I'm going to sound arrogant here, but the base level of people probably wanted to hear, when I wanted to hear the stuff that I felt I needed to hear, and I just didn't know where to go.
Yep.
And that was one of the reasons that led me to create WA Real and create the vehicle that opens the door to be able to have conversations with experts, for want of better, or people who've got stories and their opinions, and so I can get that real nourishing exchange of views and ideas and content. So for some time, I've probably disparagingly looked at the media, with the internet involved in that as well, as just being undernourished and giving people what they want at a base level. And that takes me almost back to Roman times of how to become the next emperor. We'll give them 30 days of games and then they'll vote for you.
Yes.
Give them bread and then they'll vote for you. And how do we get our way out of that?
It's a toughie.
Because you're almost saying, right, no more are we going to watch Married at First Sight.
Yeah.
Which, I'll be honest, is the basis, to me personally, is the basis level of TV. I'm going to be really blunt with you. A lot of reality TV, I look at it and go, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And I've got a degree in psychology as well.
Oh.
But I just...
You managed to get past the 4 years of it.
Yes,
I got past the
did
first.
Masters as well. I look at that and just go, for fuck's sake. There are so many other things in the world.
Yep.
So many other things, not even in the world like the Middle East or anything. So many things in the world, probably within 10k radius of where you are, that is going on, that can expand your horizons, that can be nourishing and introduce you to perceptions that are bigger and greater than yourself, which will then means that you can find newer and greater things about yourself.
I think this is exactly the issue, and I think sometimes when you're looking for content that is going to, as you say, nourish your soul, build your opportunities, you've got to look far. And there's a lot of content that's sitting in you, and what we call the old clickbait material to get your attention and say, I really want that. Now, how many of us out there today have clicked onto an article or something there and then realised that this did not deliver anything that I thought it might have?
More often than not.
More often than not. And that's the challenge there for traditional media, is to stay away from that. That's what it's competing against. We are... we're funny, your psychology side, we're funny human beings. We just need to know everything or want to know everything. But I think the other side of it is that we can blame media for this, but can we? Because at the end of the day, it's the audience that has created this media and this machine that it is. And in many ways, the media is just catering for the masses. Unfortunately, Bryn,
there's a feedback, attention.
It is, and that they're monitoring this in real time. They can see what people are attracted to and what's going to.
Yeah.
And then they're the numbers that they use to apply over to the advertisers and say, we can get you this amount of click-through. You can get this click-through. I love the word click-through, but where's the engagement? Where is the connection? Where's the relationship? And I think in the basic fundamentals...
the impact and outcome you want to derive.
There is none of that. This is all just...
I right at the very start of this, and I review it frequently, right at the very start, I sat down before I did a single episode and went, right, there are 3 parties in this. There is guest, me, listener.
Yep.
And being an ex-management consultant, I then went, right, so what do I want to deliver for each of those 3? And then what do I want them to do with that, and how is that going to shape their life? So I can see where this goes on, like our conversation today.
So the number one thing for any publisher, broadcaster, podcaster is always about audience. What is it that the audience wants, and what can I give the audience? And the difference is about what they want or what they need. And I think that all of us we want something that'll make our days a little bit better. Something that might educate us, something that might improve our lives, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what media generally is after. Something that is going to improve lives, make their lives better, and educate them to do something or get something that they wouldn't have got if they not listened or watched or viewed what's just gone on there. So if they can continue with that, if media can continue with that, the social media side of it and all the noise that goes on there, a bit like you and I, we're probably a little bit more aware of this, but we'll start becoming more discerning about where we put our time and energy into. And I think there is a movement for that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it's funny, Facebook is that people are starting to jump off it.
Yeah.
Twitter, numbers are declining.
Yeah.
The reason being is that we can only, critical mass got there, but they went, to what level? To what level do we do this? And I think, traditional media has that chance if it can just keep delivering to regain that audience back and that trust value. I mean, trust has been thrown out the door a lot here. You know, we've seen a lot of things that are going on, but I think social media is killing trust, and traditional media still has that opportunity to hold it, retain, and also to gain and grow in the future. And I think that's the big news for media. The platforms for which we're watching it, reading it on paper, a newspaper on paper, is gone.
Yeah.
You know, environmentally, we just can't continue to do that.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable, and also too, it's not quick enough.
Yeah.
But we
don't serve
screens.
chips in it anymore.
No, we don't. So. I can't use that saying anymore. You know, yes.
Tomorrow's chip wrapper.
Yeah, today's news is tomorrow's chip wrapper. And I've gone, actually, you're English, so you probably did originally have chips in newspapers. I never did. They used to use, but that would be glorious, because I'd love to have eaten my fish and chips and then read yesterday's articles. But no, I think there is a real opportunity, a real chance for traditional media to do that. And I might be the optimist in that side of it. I might be not as pessimistic around, you know, the fall of traditional media. But the only reason traditional media has fallen is that its advertising dollars have fallen. Okay, so you know, and our consumer behaviour has changed.
Yes,
and rightly so, and it changes as you go through. You know, that when television, you know, emerged, they said that was the death of radio. Radio is going up.
Yes.
And the reason radio is going up, because it still delivers high quality and it allows human beings to engage with it while doing something else. So it's a very, you know, that was 50 years ago, you know.
It's still on.
And it's still going. So, and there was one other one, Bryn, I know I do procrastinate going into different tangents, but there's a classic photo of a whole line of kids, just heads in their screens, in their phones. They're just consumed by it. But there was one other photo that was lined up from the 1950s of a whole line of kids and adults all consumed by their newspaper, heads into their newspaper. Yeah. It's just that we see the screen as the evil enemy today because we think, oh my God, we're being utterly... We are, but it's just, there is just that much on it.
Yes.
And you just, it's hard to pull your eyes away from it.
Indeed. What have you learnt about yourself in your journey with the media and Media Stable?
Look, relationships. I think when I left Rehaim and the media monitoring side of it, I was always a salesperson. So, you know, I was in that sales side of the industry, and that was always a little bit. I think any salesperson out there tries not to think themselves as a salesperson.
Yeah.
But you know, that moving away to Media Stable, where we were now consultants, and moving from a sales to consultant side was really, really powerful for me, because I really felt that.
What did that give you?
It gave me the ability not only for the outcome. As a salesperson was always there. You were thinking, this is what I need to achieve. These are the goals. Whereas as a consultant, you now were thinking more around the person at the other end.
Yes.
What their goals were, what they wanted to go away and achieve. And that was a real turnaround for me. Because we had certain targets to reach and go for.
There were numbers.
It was a numbers game. But now more so, and don't get me wrong, we are still in a sales environment as well with 100%. Media Stable, but we're more interested in what is it that you want to achieve, and how can we help you achieve it. And when we're working together on that, we get the best possible outcomes. Because Media Stable just can't put anyone on there. You know, if I put a dud on there, that reflects not on the dud, it reflects on me.
Yes.
And you know, we've had a couple of them. I won't name them, Bryn, but there's a couple here in Western Australia. You sort of just have to, you know, say, look, it's just not going to fit with what we're doing and how we go about it. But I think for me personally, growing from a salesperson to a consultant has been a remarkable opportunity, because I can sleep well at night. Yeah. It was incredible. Yeah. You know, I feel like I've achieved something.
With the mirror brushing your teeth.
Yeah. Oh, look, I never had a real issue back in the days when I was doing the sales side of it, because I was actually not just achieving for the business that I was working for, but I was achieving, I suppose, for the client. But they had a different requirement. They had a different need. It was very much more transactional.
Yes.
Whereas this is far more relationship and consultative based. And I thoroughly enjoy that more.
So there's multiple wins around the table with what you do today.
And the other side of it is we're in the education game as well. So we want to educate and help people be better at what they're doing. Only yesterday we were running a workshop that was designed to not people to join Media Stable. It was designed to help them do it on their own.
Right.
And that might, many will say, and I've had many people say to me, go, why do you give people all this IP? Why do you give them all this content for them to do it on their own, or even shorten their experience with you, only stay on with you for 12 months, not for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah.
I say, but their goals have been achieved. If they've reached their personal goals and their time's done, my time's done with them. You know? And those that I'm teaching to work with the media, if we can give them the toolkit to do it, they know that we're the ones that have given it to them. If they want to expand on that further, then they can come and utilise the services that we have there. But I think, I work in an industry...
It's adding max value, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do work in an industry that there is a lot of smoke and mirrors behind it. But since the internet, since everything that's moving on, those smoke and mirrors have disappeared. It's far more visible, and it's back to basics. It's back to relationships, back to high quality content, good information, and people that are passionate about what they do. And that's what we're looking for. And if we continue to deliver it, we continue to do well. I think I answered your question, but I think I really thoroughly enjoyed the transition from sales to consultancy in a long-winded way there, Bryn.
Indeed. It was lovely to hear. What have you got any goals for the next 3 to 5 years for yourself and Media Stable? Yeah,
Media Stable, I'd like to take it international. I think the model works, and funnily enough, I've just come back from a European trip with the family, and did get a chance to go and meet a few agencies that are over there that have an appetite for what we're doing. Our model is nowhere else. So
really,
and I sort of knew it wasn't, but
because to me it just makes bloody sense. Right. It's just there you go. You got these experts. There you go. We know it doesn't exist here in Australia. It's fascinating.
And if you were to, we flipped the system around the PR element, but we also flipped the system around. Look, those that don't necessarily have big budgets to work with media can still work with it. Some of the best voices are unheard because they're competing against people with 100, 150k PR budgets. But no one else was doing it. But back in the day in our early days, we were getting calls from media going, do you know a good family law lawyer? Do you know a good naturopath, nutritionist? Yeah. And we could see that it was on both sides were needing it. Experts wanted to be up there and media wanted it. And why no one else was doing it? But also too, I had a PR company that I was making very good money, that I'd work with 5 or 6 clients and make just as much money as I'm working with the 200 odd clients I'm working with now. So it's a scale system as well, but no one else was prepared to go away and do it. So that connection and bridge hasn't been done before, and it's not been done in Europe. It's been done in a lesser degree in North America, but we'll see how it goes. But getting it right here is first and foremost, and we're 8 years.
As a blueprint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Perth and WA is our fortress. It's our home. My director of media engagement is the former program director at 6PR. I've got high quality people that have been working in media right across.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something beautiful about the isolated nature of Perth, which means you can go and really test something in the close environment. The 1.8 million people that live in metropolitan Perth. It's not difficult to find somebody and test it before you release it to the world.
Oh, absolutely, and the opportunity also that presents to people like myself. I mean, who would let a Victorian 25-year-old onto radio and trying to tell the presenter at the other end that it's Cockburn sound, not Coburn sound?
Exactly.
Opportunity here in WA is enormous.
Yes.
And you're right. It is a little fortress. It's so distant from everywhere else that you can test these. And if you get it right in this environment, you can take it national and you can take it global. So in many ways, this is where it all started. We have taken it national. We're doing extremely well. It is a little bit difficult sometimes taking calls at 4:30 in the morning from Sydney who have no regard for our 3-hour time difference during this wonderful time we call daylight saving. But, they have daylight saving, we have the lack of it. But, because they're cows and our curtains all fade. Let's not get on that. But, I think if you get it right here, you can pretty much take it anywhere.
Yeah.
And we're a bit fickle, West Australians. We're a bit parochial. We love our little space and environment. We will succeed one day. No, we won't. We are very much a fortress, and if you can get it right in the fortress, you can go beyond it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
This must get heady stuff working in this space. What do you do to keep yourself grounded? I've got a couple of funny little quirky things I like to do. One, I've got grass out the front of my place in Karrinyup that is dead now, but because I've been away. But I love growing my grass. I'm very proud of my grass. So I do get out in the garden a little. I'm not a green thumb or anything like that. I do enjoy that. My boys, I've got a 9 and 7-year-old who are passionate about everything, and there's not much time outside of that. But I love hanging out with them, and we're at Nippers every Sunday. It's footy during footy season. They do ninjas, they do all sorts of activities, and that's the kind of stuff. It's the family that brings you together. I'm really fortunate. My wife is actually is a teacher, and our ability to during school holidays, etc., really does help the fact that we can get both our jobs done, and in my line of business, I'm a bit more flexible with my hours, so we can get to those activities that probably a lot of parents can't get to. Yeah. And that's a part I thoroughly enjoy. I like going to the gym. As you can see, I'm built like a brick, proverbial. But no, I'm not. I like to exercise. I like to get out in the sun. I prefer Melbourne climate probably more so than Perth. I'm not a big fan of the hot weather, and it does drive me mad. When it fires up.
Here you sitting in your red waistcoat and I'm sitting in my full suit. It's
with aircon.
With aircon on, thank heavens. But I just enjoy being around the environment that is Western Australia. It's just so much fun, and most people are happy, and it pleases me. That's the little things. It's just being here just pleases me and keeps me grounded.
And the last question I ask my guests is if you could take one little nugget of information and upload it into the collective consciousness so everyone just gets it, what would that be?
It's great. It's a great one. I think we've got to get back to being build back to relationships and back to that human connections that we seem to have thrown out with the bathwater many years ago. I think the one thing that I'd like to see more of, and this is probably my disdain for social media, is that we've distanced ourselves from that actual connection. The ability for you and I to do this, eye to eye, talking and having a chat is so rare these days. People are not doing this. So if I was to give one little nugget and to let everyone get out and converse with your fellow human beings, take that time and effort. It comes back and repays you.
Yes.
It fills your soul with,
It's nourishing and healing at one level.
Oh, absolutely. So while we haven't been listening to the radio or consuming, dailymail.co.uk sort of thing, we're having a conversation and two human beings are talking. Now, I've been talking a lot of rubbish right now, Bryn, and you can take it in. You can take it in. You can make that decision, though. But, and I think that's the sort of thing that I'd like to see more of, because if there's one thing that we know in my game, it is all about relationships and trust. And I think that trust has been left at the door in a lot of the family life, business life, anything. we are now doubtful around where we are. But I think if we can come back to that connection relationship and build that trust back up, that's what I'd like to see more people doing. That's the little nugget I'd like to leave people with, is get out and make an effort.
Awesome. Nic, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Bryn, I could go on for hours. Let's keep going. No.
You can come back another day.
It's a real pleasure. No, and look, and what you're doing is fantastic too.
Thank you.
And from a media perspective, I feel that podcasting, and I've been in podcasting myself for many years, it's remarkable how much, if you take the time and effort and energy to extract someone's, in media, you've got 60 seconds, or in most cases in a news piece, you've got 7 seconds to deliver your soundbite.
Yeah.
Podcasting allows it not like to just be sound bites. We're now talking really getting in behind people and finding out who they are and what they're about. And this is the medium that I think many people want, a bit more long form kind of media, not the little snack size bites that they're getting.
I find certainly in the early part of WA Real, I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's great, but could you edit it down?" And I was sort of like, "No."
Oh, it was frightening for me to think that I'm going to be sitting here for potentially 60 minutes to 90 minutes talking. But you go, because I've never done anything over, well, I do occasional bits on radio, 30, 60 minutes, but there's that many ads in there between. You're really only talking for about 4.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I also got, in the early days, interviewed on Fremantle Radio about the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was asked, who's the podcast for and who's it not for? And my first response was, it's not for people with short attention spans.
Yeah. How many people do you reckon have got through this?
Sorry?
How many people do you think have got through listening to this point in the podcast?
I don't know.
Jeez.
We'd have to...
I'll
look at the stats.
Look at the person right now. I can see that person right there. Yeah, they've listened. They've got through.
Someone's scratching his nose. But no, thank you very much, because I fundamentally believe in the importance of human engagement. I've only ever done 2 interviews through Zoom, and I'm not doing any more.
Yeah.
I believe in the long form conversation. It doesn't have the sound bites and all of that, but it's here. And I've built a catalogue and built a catalogue and built a catalogue, and I find it fascinating how many people all of a sudden find me. I mean, it's like, how many people ever actually watched the very first episode of Game of Thrones when it came out? Nobody did. They come in at episode 3 or 4 and then go back and binge. And it fascinates me when I get a call out from somebody and they say, "I've just found your podcast and I've just listened to the last 30, 40, 50 of them."
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And I've learned so much, and I now know this and I now know that. And that just lights me up, because that's what this is all around.
It's so powerful. And if some people will have and want the 5-10 minute piece,
100%.
But if you want to listen to that longer form piece and get behind someone, I think this is brilliant. And I too experienced something similar, and I had someone come up to me during one of my kids' football training sessions, and he said, "You're the most disappointing person I have seen this week." And I looked at him. I've never met him. I'm going, "What do you think?" And it had just been, the episode had dropped on my podcast, that it was our last episode.
Oh, right.
After 4 years broadcasting it, one every week, and it was guaranteed. And it was like, and he just said, "I just found your podcast, and now you've just stopped." So he said, "I've trailed back." He's gone back to number 1, and he's listening right through the catalogue. He's got 4 years worth to get through. But I said, "Oh, mate, thank you for that." But you're right. You when people do acknowledge it for what it is and what you're doing it for a reason. But also too, I just think that if you can get behind someone, and it's not just that face value, you're finding out a little bit more. I reckon it's so powerful. So well done.
Thank you. And if people want to come and find you?
Nic at mediastable.com.au. We're Perth based. We're nationally focused as well. And look, if they're an expert, a commentator, I know a lot of speakers and a lot of people listen to your program. So definitely, if you've got an opinion and a view, it's a platform to share it from.
Indeed. Nic, thank you very much for your time.
Good on you, Bryn.
Cheers.
Cheers.